300,000 years ago, an early human known as Homo erectus stands completely still in the suffocating humidity of a Southeast Asian jungle. He grips a sharpened wooden spear and a piece of napped flint. These weapons are entirely useless for what he is looking at. Less than 50 feet away, tearing through thick bamboo clusters like wet paper, is a real-life King Kong. This is not a myth. This is Gigantopithecus blacki. It stands 10 feet tall. It weighs over 600 pounds. Its arms are as thick as tree trunks, powered by dense muscle fibers capable of snapping a human spine with a casual swipe. When this animal walks, the jungle floor vibrates. Early humans living in these Asian forests did not just imagine monsters in the dark. They shared their daily reality with the largest primate to ever walk the earth. If you stood face to face with a full-grown male Gigantopithecus, you would stare directly into its chest. To look into its eyes, you would have to crane your neck painfully upward. If it opened its mouth, you would see a jaw so impossibly thick and teeth so massive that early scientists literally thought they belonged to dragons. Being a giant makes an animal practically invincible right up until the exact moment it guarantees its agonizing death. Gigantopithecus fell into a biological trap. The mechanics of its massive body forced it into an evolutionary corner that it couldn't escape from. The story of how we found out about this monster starts in 1935, inside a traditional Chinese apothecary in Hong Kong. A German paleontologist named Ralph von Koenigswald walked into the shop looking for fossils. In traditional Chinese medicine, fossilized animal bones were grouped up and sold as dragon bones to cure ailments. While sorting through a drawer of these so-called dragon teeth, von Koenigswald froze. He was holding a molar, twice the size of a male gorilla's. It was too big to make biological sense. He bought the tooth. He named the ghost animal Gigantopithecus. Over the next few decades, scientists scoured the limestone karst caves of southern China, Vietnam, and Indonesia. They expected to find massive thigh bones, intact rib cages, or a giant skull. They found nothing of the sort. In fact, to this day, we have never found a single skull, arm bone, or leg bone of this giant. We have found exactly 4 complete lower jaw bones and over 2,000 fossilized teeth. The biological explanation for this is brutal. The jungles of Southeast Asia are highly acidic environments. The dense, wet soil eats calcium at an astonishing rate. When a 600-pound Gigantopithecus died, its skeleton was dissolved by the earth or scavenged by predators in a matter of months. But how did these 2,000 enormous teeth end up inside subterranean caves? Well, the answer involves prehistoric porcupines. Pleistocene porcupines possessed an insatiable biological drive to gnaw on bones to extract calcium and sharpen their incisors. These giant rodents scavenged the jungle floor. They dragged the skeletal remains of dead Gigantopithecus individuals deep into their dark cave dens. Then they systematically chewed away the softer bones, leaving only the rock-hard enamel-covered teeth behind. We literally only know this magnificent giant existed because a prehistoric rodent wanted a calcium snack. Almost all the teeth we have today feature microscopic porcupine bite marks. Now you might wonder how we know it was 10 feet tall if we only have teeth and jaws. Well, it comes down to strict biological mathematics. In primates, there is a very tight, predictable correlation between the size of mandibular joints, the molars, and total body mass. When biomechanical engineers take a jawbone that is thick enough to stop a bullet and scale it up using the anatomy of modern great apes, the math reveals an animal weighing between 440 to 660 pounds. Now, Homo erectus migrated into Eastern Asia around 800,000 years ago. They used fire, crafted stone hand axes, and had complex social structures. But when they encountered Gigantopithecus in the dense subtropical forests, they almost certainly backed away slowly. Homo erectus stood about 5 feet to maybe 5'9", weighing around 140 pounds. To them, Gigantopithecus was an untouchable force of nature. There is zero fossil evidence of physical warfare between the two species. Paleontologists have not unearthed any Gigantopithecus bones bearing cut marks from stone tools. You do not hunt a 600-pound wall of muscle with a sharpened stick unless you have a death wish. But biological interaction was inevitable. They shared the same ecosystem. They navigated the exact same river systems in modern-day southern China. Gigantopithecus was a strictly herbivorous animal. It was not hunting humans for meat. But do not mistake herbivore for harmless. Think about modern hippos or Cape buffalo. Herbivores are fiercely territorial. A startled Gigantopithecus would have been terrifying. The kinetic energy of a 600-pound ape defending its territory would be an unstoppable force. An ape of that size does not just bite, it crushes. Its jaw biomechanics were uniquely adapted for lateral excursion. Unlike a gorilla that bites straight up and down, Gigantopithecus had a massive underbite and chewed side to side to grind up incredibly tough plants. It possessed the thickest dental enamel of any ape in history. Its jaw was designed to pulverize dirt-covered roots, dense bark, and thick bamboo stalks. Its bite force could shatter a human femur like a dry twig. For 2 million years, Gigantopithecus won the evolutionary lottery. It had no natural predators. Tigers and packs of wild dogs would never dare attack a healthy adult male. But that massive body was a biological time bomb. To sustain a 600-pound body on a plant-based diet, the mathematics are pretty brutal. You need tens of thousands of calories in a single day. You are a biological engine requiring a non-stop conveyor belt of food. A modern silverback gorilla spends roughly half of its waking hours eating, consuming up to 40 pounds vegetation every single day. Gigantopithecus was 50% larger than a silverback. It likely needed to consume 60 to 80 pounds of food daily. During the early Pleistocene, southern China was a paradise for a giant ape. The region was blanketed in a dense, closed canopy subtropical forest. The climate was incredibly stable. The forest produced a never-ending buffet of sweet fruits, highly nutritious flowers, and massive amounts of dense foliage year-round. Gigantopithecus did not have to work hard to survive. Paleontologists recently extracted microscopic phytoliths directly from the calcified plaque on these fossilized teeth. Scientists also analyzed stable carbon and oxygen isotopes embedded deep within the enamel matrix. The isotopic results showed a rigidly inflexible vegetarian diet. Gigantopithecus did not just rely on bamboo, though. It ate massive quantities of fibrous fruits, tough shoots, dense roots, and broad leaves exclusively from the dense, closed canopy forest. It was fundamentally a creature of the deep shade, entirely dependent on the constant humidity and endless productivity of the ancient Asian jungle. But then, the Earth betrayed it. Around 700,000 years ago, the planet's climate system began to fracture. We entered a geological phase called the Middle Pleistocene Transition. The Earth's deep glacial cycles suddenly elongated and intensified into brutal 100,000-year intervals. Massive glaciers locked up the Earth's water at the poles. This radically altered regional weather patterns across the globe. The stable humid environment of Southeast Asia began to swing wildly. The predictable humidity violently gave way to distinct, severe, and prolonged dry seasons. The dense, heavily shaded forests that Gigantopithecus entirely depended on began to dry out and physically break apart. The deep, dark jungle was slowly replaced by open, mosaic woodlands, dry savanna grasslands, and scattered shrubs. The endless buffet was closing. When an environment changes, a species has to adapt, migrate, or die. Gigantopithecus was physically incapable of adapting. A 10-foot, 600-pound ape cannot suddenly become a savanna animal. It cannot climb thin, sparse trees to reach the few remaining fruits. It is anchored to the ground by its own massive gravity. It cannot easily migrate across wide, sun-baked, open savannas to find newly isolated forest patches. Its massive body heavily restricted its mobility, and it was entirely geographically trapped in a rapidly shrinking and dying forest world. In January 2024, a groundbreaking study published in the prestigious journal Nature finally solved the exact mechanics of how this giant died out. An international team of scientists spent over a decade analyzing 22 different cave sites spread across southern China. They used highly advanced dating techniques to build a flawless timeline of the ape's final days. They looked inside the teeth themselves. Tooth tissue is a flight data recorder for an animal's life. By mapping trace elements like barium, strontium, and calcium locked inside the fossilized enamel, scientists can read the exact diet and stress levels of the ape just before it died. The data showed that as the forests vanished, Gigantopithecus began to starve. The sweet fruits and canopy plants it relied on disappeared during the long, brutal dry seasons. Desperate, the giant ape was forced to eat tree bark, dry twigs, and deeply fibrous fallback foods that severely wore down its thick enamel. Its massive body simply could not extract enough vital calories from the changing vegetation to keep its organs functioning. You cannot run a 600-pound engine on dry twigs. In a healthy ape, the trace elements in the teeth are evenly banded, showing a diverse and rich diet. In the teeth from the later periods, while the trace element banding is erratic and chaotic. This is the biomechanical signature of intense chronic stress and severe malnutrition. The animals were suffering, and their numbers plummeted. Because of their sheer size, they reproduced very slowly. Large mammals with notoriously slow reproductive rates are universally the worst equipped creatures to handle rapid environmental shifts. A female Gigantopithecus likely carried a single baby in the womb for 8 or 9 long months. She carefully nursed and intensely protected it for several years. She biologically only reproduced once every 5 to 6 years. When widespread starvation brutally hits an isolated population with such incredibly slow reproductive cycles, the local population physically crashes. Infant mortality skyrockets. There was simply not enough fuel to grow new giants. We know precisely where this gargantuan beast fits into the primate family tree, thanks to a massive technological breakthrough in 2019. Molecular biologists extracted ancient proteins directly from the pristine enamel of a 1.9 million year old Gigantopithecus molar. By successfully sequencing the ancient dental proteome, researchers definitively proved that Gigantopithecus is not a close relative of gorillas, chimpanzees, or humans. Its closest living relative is the modern orangutan. The genetic data perfectly aligned, showing that their lineages split roughly 10 to 12 million years ago. An ancient species of orangutan shared the exact same ancient forests with the giant ape. When the climate shifted, an ancient orangutan physically adapted by actively shrinking. Its overall body size drastically decreased over thousands of generations. This significantly reduced its daily caloric needs and allowed its smaller, lighter body to climb higher and stay securely up in the remaining fragmented tree canopy where life-saving food was still safely accessible. Homo erectus did not just survive, they thrived. Humans are the ultimate generalists. We do not have 600 pounds of muscle. We do not have massive fangs. We have a brain that can solve complex problems and a digestive system that can process almost anything. When the fruits disappeared, Homo erectus changed the menu. They hunted different animals. They tracked herds across the open plains. They dug into the dirt for high-calorie tubers and roots. They used fire to cook their food, unlocking massive amounts of nutrients that were otherwise entirely indigestible. If a plant was toxic raw, fire made it edible. If meat was tough, fire made it soft. Homo erectus were the ultimate behavioral shapeshifters. They did not need to evolve new teeth to eat new food, they just evolved new tools. The sheer size of Gigantopithecus was a luxury that the changing Earth could no longer afford. It was highly specialized for a world that ceased to exist. The 2024 Nature study confirmed that between 295,000 to 215,000 years ago, the primary high-quality food sources for Gigantopithecus rapidly vanished. The final window of extinction permanently closed. The population of giants shrank to isolated, starving pockets trapped on ecological islands, surrounded by an expanding, hostile sea of dry grasslands. By exactly 215,000 years ago, the very last of these majestic giants finally collapsed from starvation in the rapidly thinning, drastically altered forests of southern China. A highly successful, deeply specialized species that had actively thrived and dominated the deep Asian jungles for well over 2 million years, simply blinked out of total existence. The towering trees were gone, the thick vegetation was dead, the ground was hard and baked by the sun. Early human hunters did not hunt the real-life King Kong to its bloody extinction. We merely watched him slowly starve to death in a changing world. The absolute only physical proof that human beings actively shared the ancient Earth with a massive real-life giant ape sits quietly inside heavily guarded museum drawers. It is a small handful of fragmented jawbones and a couple of thousand isolated teeth, miraculously saved from complete biological oblivion only because a prehistoric porcupine desperately wanted a quick calcium snack. And hey, I'll catch you next time.